Hollywood is known for its spectacle, the explosive action scenes, the towering heroes the stories crafted to thrill millions. But behind that bright fade lies an entirely different world, one most audiences never hear about. A shadowed space filled with finished movies that, for reasons never printed on posters, were quietly sealed away. Films that were fully shot, edited, mixed, polished, then left to gather dust for years. These weren't troubled productions or half-finished experiments. They were complete action films ready to hit theaters until something behind the scenes shifted. Sometimes it was a studio collapse, sometimes corporate politics, sometimes fear of backlash, or the arrival of a new owner who no longer believed in the project. And sometimes the decision to bury a film had nothing to do with the film itself, but everything to do with timing, money, or power. Imagine entire crews pushing through long nights, stunt performers risking injury, actors giving their all only for the final product to vanish into a vault. Imagine directors watching a film they poured their soul into being locked away because someone in an office decided it wasn't worth the risk. Years later, these movies would surface quietly, often without fanfare, leaving audiences with no clue that the story on their screens had once been trapped in limbo. That the film they were watching had already lived one life, a silent life, before the world ever laid eyes on it. Tonight, we open those vaults. We explore the forgotten corners, the shuttered archives, the legal coffins, and the financial ruins that swallowed these films whole. These are the action movies that were completed yet kept from the world. Fact 1, Red Dawn, 2012. When Red Dawn wrapped production in 2009, everything pointed toward a smooth release. The film had a young, energetic cast, action, heavy sequences, and a polished final cut ready for theaters. But as the movie neared its debut, the world around it shifted in a way no one could have predicted. In its original version, the invading force was China, a creative choice that suddenly became a massive financial liability. Hollywood had begun relying heavily on the Chinese market, and executives feared that portraying China as the villain could cost them billions in future revenue. A completed film instantly transformed into a geopolitical threat. Instead of moving forward, the studio slammed the brakes. Red Dawn disappeared from schedules, vanished from marketing calendars, and went into a quiet freeze. While the cast moved on to other projects, the movie waited dormant as executives debated how to salvage it. The solution they settled on was extraordinary, altering the film frame by frame to replace every Chinese insignia, uniform, and symbol with North Korean ones. Dialogue was dubbed over. Entire shots were reconstructed digitally. It was as though history itself was being rewritten in an editing bay. By the time the movie finally reached theaters in 2012, audiences had no idea they were watching a heavily modified version of a film Hollywood once feared to release. A finished action movie reshaped not by storytelling but by global politics. Fact 2, The New Mutants. When The New Mutants completed filming in 2017, it promised a fresh, darker take on the superhero genre, blending intense action with psychological tension. The cast delivered strong performances, post-production wrapped smoothly, and the film stood ready for release. But corporate events soon intervened. Disney's acquisition of 20th Century Fox created an unforeseen obstacle. The film, fully completed, became trapped in a corporate transition. Executives were unsure how to proceed with a title from a franchise they intended to reboot, and no one wanted to invest in promoting a movie that no longer fit the studio's long-term plan. Rumors of reshoots and tone adjustments circulated, yet the delay wasn't due to creative concerns. It was simply caught in a corporate limbo. For 3 years, the completed movie waited unseen, its fate determined by mergers and negotiations rather than its quality. When it finally premiered in 2020, audiences witnessed a fully finished film that had been invisible for years, a ghost of a franchise in transition. Fact 3, Max Steel. Max Steel wrapped filming in 2014, a small-budget action film built for international markets. Production went smoothly, post-production was completed, and the film was technically ready to reach audiences. Yet, it faced an unexpected obstacle: the financial instability of its studio. Dolphin Films, responsible for financing and distributing the project, encountered severe financial problems, just as the movie was set for release. With no marketing funds or committed distributors, the finished film had nowhere to go. For nearly 2 years, Max Steel remained untouched, not because of creative issues, but because there was no infrastructure to support its release. When it finally reached audiences in 2016, it emerged quietly, almost anonymously, a completed film left unseen for years, a reminder that Hollywood sometimes buries films not due to failure, but due to circumstance. Fact 4: Punisher Warzone. When Punisher Warzone finished production in 2006, the creative team believed they had crafted a ferocious, unapologetic adaptation, a film that embraced the raw brutality of Frank Castle in a way no previous version had dared. The final cut was ready, the sound design complete, the color grading locked. But inside the studio boardrooms, reactions were far from enthusiastic. Executives were stunned by what they saw. Instead of the sleek, commercially friendly anti-hero they hoped for, they were confronted with a violent, rage-fueled descent into vigilantism, one that they feared mainstream audiences would reject. Marketing teams didn't know how to position it. Leadership didn't know how to defend it. And so, instead of being pushed toward release, the finished film was slowly, quietly pushed aside. Internal discussions dragged on. Should the violence be trimmed down? Should the tone be softened? Should they bury the project entirely? While these debates simmered, the completed movie sat untouched on a shelf collecting dust, while its fate remained uncertain. When the film eventually premiered in 2008, it arrived almost anonymously with minimal promotion and little support from the studio that had once financed it. The movie that had been finished and ready for years was released not with pride but with hesitation. A completed action film sidelined not by technical problems but by the fear of its own intensity. Fact 5: The Keeper. By 2005, Steven Seagal was still producing action films at a steady pace, relying on international markets and home video to maintain his presence. The Keeper followed the same path, shot efficiently, edited without issue, and finished quickly. Everything was in place for a straightforward release except one critical piece. No distributor wanted it. The film didn't face a scandal or a legal battle. It wasn't too violent, nor was it creatively chaotic. The problem was far simpler. Studios no longer believed Seagal's name could guarantee profit. Without a willing buyer, the completed movie found itself stranded, drifting without a release date or a marketing plan. Months turned into years. The film sat fully assembled, unseen, and unrequested as distributors passed on it again and again. Nobody wanted to invest in promoting a title they assumed had limited commercial value. And so The Keeper became a finished product that Hollywood simply had no interest in showing. Only in 2009 did a small company finally pick it up, releasing it with little fanfare. For viewers, it was just another Seagal film, but the truth was stranger. They were watching a movie that had been invisible for years despite being complete in every way. Reminder that sometimes a film doesn't vanish because it's controversial, but because the industry no longer cares. Would you like me to continue with Fact 6? Fact 6: Killing Season. On paper, Killing Season seemed like a guaranteed success. With Robert De Niro and John Travolta in a tense survival action story set deep in the wilderness, the film had the cast, the concept, and the craftsmanship to make a strong theatrical impact. Filming wrapped in 2008, post-production followed smoothly, and the movie reached a finished cut without serious obstacles. Then, the global financial crisis struck. Suddenly, the studio behind the film found itself fighting for survival. Budgets were frozen, promotional campaigns were slashed, and the money needed to launch a wide theatrical release evaporated almost instantly. A completed film became an unwanted burden one the studio simply couldn't afford to support. With no marketing budget and no stability, the film was pushed aside. Not because the studio doubted the quality, but because releasing it during a financial meltdown would guarantee losses they could no longer absorb. So Killing Season remained sealed away, waiting for a time when the industry might recover enough to take a chance on it. That moment didn't arrive until 2013, 5 years after the film had been completed. By then, the momentum was gone, the excitement faded, and the movie entered the world quietly far too late to make the impact it deserved. A fully finished action thriller frozen by forces far beyond Hollywood's control. Fact 7. The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. When The Man Who Killed Don Quixote finally completed a full cut around 2010, it marked what many believed was the end of Terry Gilliam's infamous decades-long struggle to bring the story to life. The performances were locked, the edit was finished. And after so many failed attempts, the film finally existed, a real, tangible movie. But instead of celebration, a new nightmare began. Producer Paulo Branco stepped forward, claiming he, not Gilliam, controlled the rights to the finished film. Gilliam disputed it, sparking a legal war fueled by old contracts, ambiguous agreements, and years of tangled paperwork. Suddenly, a completed movie became the centerpiece of a courtroom battle no distributor dared to touch. Festivals that wanted to screen it were forced to back away. Companies interested in buying it withdrew the moment lawyers appeared. Even Gilliam himself was legally prevented from showing his own finished work. The dispute was so complex and so bitter that the movie, though fully complete, was effectively sealed inside a legal vault. Year after year, it sat there, not because of technical flaws, not because of reshoots or controversy, but because two sides refused to relinquish control. Only in 2018 did a ruling finally allow the film to be released. After 8 years of stagnation, a completed movie was freed from a prison of contracts, signatures, and judicial delays. A finished film held hostage, not by Hollywood, but by the law. Fact 8. All the Boys Love Mandy Lane. When All the Boys Love Mandy Lane wrapped production in 2006, it had everything needed to become a breakout action horror hit. The cut was finished, the festival buzz was strong, and Amber Heard's rising profile gave it momentum. U.S. distribution deal was secured, the last major step before release. Then the distributor collapsed. When the company went bankrupt, the film's U.S. rights became trapped in a financial freeze. Because those rights were now tied to the company's debt, they couldn't legally be sold, transferred, or used until the bankruptcy process concluded. The finished film became an asset locked inside a maze of financial paperwork. So while audiences overseas were already watching the movie, American viewers were left wondering why it had vanished. The cast moved on to bigger roles. The hype faded. Yet the completed film remained stuck untouched, simply because no one could untangle the ownership during the bankruptcy proceedings. 7 years passed. 7 years of a finished film sitting completely ready, unable to be shown. Only in 2013 did a new distributor manage to acquire and release it, turning what should have been a timely release into a curiosity, a lost film that had been finished all along. A complete movie undone not by failure, but by the collapse of the company meant to bring it to the world. Fact 9. The Cabin in the Woods. By 2009, The Cabin in the Woods was fully finished, a smart genre-bending mix of action, horror, and satire. The visual effects were complete. The final edit was locked, and marketing materials had already begun rolling out. Everything was in place for a release that could have redefined the genre. Then, MGM went bankrupt. When the studio collapsed, every asset it owned, including completed films, became frozen under bankruptcy protection. This meant The Cabin in the Woods couldn't be sold, licensed, or released until the courts approved it. A movie that was ready to hit theaters was suddenly treated like part of a collapsed company's inventory, waiting for lawyers and accountants to decide its fate. For 3 long years, the finished film sat in storage. The cast, including a pre-Thor Chris Hemsworth, moved on. The industry changed. The excitement faded. And the movie waited powerless for MGM's financial resurrection. When it finally premiered in 2012, viewers had no idea they were watching a work that had been locked away for years. A fully complete film, trapped not by creative problems, but by the implosion of the studio behind it. A finished action horror caught in the wreckage of a fallen empire. Fact 10, the Grandmaster U. Cut. When The Grandmaster was completed in 2010, it stood as one of Wong Kar-wai's most visually striking works, a martial arts epic, shaped with meticulous choreography, poetic pacing, and rich atmosphere. The international version was already earning acclaim abroad, celebrated for its beauty and depth. But as soon as it crossed into Hollywood's hands, the film's journey took an unexpected detour. American distributors believed audiences wouldn't connect with the film's structure or its meditative storytelling. They wanted something faster, clearer, more direct, a version re-engineered for Western sensibilities. And so began a long, quiet struggle behind closed doors. The film was already finished, yet demands were made for a shorter runtime, added narration, and a restructured storyline. Wong Kar-wai resisted, but the studio held the distribution rights, and without their approval, the movie could not be released in the United States. A complete work suddenly found itself forced back into the editing room. This standoff dragged on for years. The film played to audiences around the world, but the U.S. cut remained suspended in limbo, waiting for someone to decide how much of the original vision should be altered. When it finally arrived in 2013, it was a different version shaped not by creative exploration, but by pressure and compromise. A finished epic delayed simply because Hollywood wanted a story told its way. Fact 11 G.I. Joe Retaliation. G.I. Joe Retaliation completed filming in 2011 with every expectation of becoming a big summer event. Marketing had already kicked off with posters, trailers, and promotion anchored by a star-studded cast that included Dwayne Johnson, Bruce Willis, and Channing Tatum. The movie was not only finished, it was already on the launch pad. Then test audiences reacted in a way no one expected. Channing Tatum, whose role was small and short-lived in the film, had suddenly become one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. Viewers wanted more of him, and the studio panicked at the idea of wasting his rising popularity. So, in a dramatic reversal, the release was pulled. A finished blockbuster was suddenly yanked from the calendar. Executives ordered new scenes, expanded Tatum's presence, and decided to convert the entire film into 3D to boost its global appeal. What had been a complete movie now returned to production limbo. Sets were revisited, actors brought back, and the film re-engineered, all because the market had shifted and Hollywood wanted to maximize profit. By the time the film finally released in 2013, it was no longer the movie that had been finished 2 years earlier. It was a hybrid of studio strategy reshoots and last-minute redesigns, a completed film reshaped purely for commercial appeal. Fact 12, The Hurt Locker. Before it became an award-winning landmark, The Hurt Locker existed in a strange purgatory. Filming wrapped in 2007, the cut was finished and festival audiences praised it for its gripping tension and powerful performances. Yet, despite its quality, Hollywood hesitated to touch it. The problem wasn't the filmmaking, it was the climate. Iraq War movies had been performing terribly at the box office. Studios believed audiences were tired of war, exhausted by the news, and unwilling to spend money on films that reflected current conflicts. Even with glowing early reactions, no major distributor wanted the financial risk. And so, the finished film sat. Not for weeks, but for years. Perfectly complete, yet completely unwanted. Potential partners passed repeatedly, not because they doubted the film, but because they doubted the audience. Only in 2009 did a smaller distributor step forward, taking a gamble on a movie Hollywood had kept at arm's length. The release was modest, almost cautious, and then the film shocked the industry. It went on to win 6 Oscars, including Best Picture, proving that Hollywood had kept a future classic hidden simply out of fear. A finished masterpiece delayed because the industry misjudged the world around it. Fact 13. Solomon Kane. When Solomon Kane wrapped in 2007, it carried all the marks of a dark fantasy adventure, ready for release, sweeping battle scenes, mist-covered villages, and a commanding performance from James Purefoy. The editing was complete, the visual effects were locked, and the film stood poised to launch a new franchise. But the industry machinery behind it faltered at the worst possible moment. The producers had funneled nearly everything into finishing the film itself, leaving little to nothing for the enormous cost of marketing and distribution. Without a financial engine to push it forward, the fully completed movie had no way to reach audiences. Distributors grew hesitant, concerned not about quality, but about the financial load required to get the film into theaters. As months became years, the film's value dimmed. The longer a finished movie sits, the harder it becomes to sell, and Solomon Kane slowly drifted into obscurity, trapped by the simple reality that no one had the money to properly release it. It wasn't until 2012, 5 years after its completion, that the movie finally emerged in the U. By then, whatever momentum it once had was long gone, and what could have been a franchise opener instead became a cinematic afterthought. A fully finished film stranded by nothing more than an empty wallet. Fact 14. Police Story 2013 U.S. release. When Police Story 2013 debuted across Asia, Jackie Chan's fans saw a new side of him, darker, more grounded, and emotionally heavy. The film was completed on schedule, released promptly overseas, and supported by a full marketing push. But when it came to the U.S., the already finished movie was quietly placed on pause. American distributors believed the film could do better if released at a perfect moment. They wanted to avoid box office competition, align with Jackie Chan's popularity spikes, or find a more strategic window. So they waited and waited and waited. The finished film sat untouched for months, at first, then years. No reshoots, no re-edit, no controversy, just indecision, a constant search for a market advantage that never arrived. By the time the movie finally reached U.S. audiences in 2015, the buzz had evaporated. International hype had passed, trailers felt outdated, and the American release landed with a whisper instead of the impact it could have had. A completed film kept in limbo, not by problems but by hesitation, a gamble that cost it its moment. Fact 15. Boyka Undisputed IV. When Boyka Undisputed IV finished production in 2014, fans of the franchise expected another rapid-fire release. The film featured some of Scott Adkins' most intense fight choreography and had all the polish of a ready-to-go martial arts sequel. Creatively, everything was complete, but independent cinema moves at a very different speed than Hollywood blockbusters. Without a major studio backing it, the finished film had to be sold territory by territory, a slow, fragile process dependent on distributors' confidence. And with action films outside the mainstream already considered risky, many buyers hesitated or backed out, leaving the completed movie without a coordinated plan for release. As negotiations dragged on across different countries and regions, the finished film simply sat. Not because of reshoots, not because of editing problems, but because deals weren't closing fast enough. Some territories picked it up early, others delayed for years, and many left it hanging in uncertainty. It took until 2017, 3 years after completion, for the film to finally reach most of the world. Even then, its release was scattered, inconsistent, and far from the unified premiere fans expected. A finished action film frozen not by disaster, but by the sluggish wheels of independent distribution. Chat N.I. Bonus fact: The Brave. When The Brave was completed in 1996, Johnny Depp believed he had created something deeply personal, a bleak, intimate drama that pushed him creatively as both actor and first-time director. The film's final cut was locked, Iggy Pop's haunting score was in place, and the movie was ready to step into the world. It even premiered at Cannes in 1997, earning both praise and discomfort for its uncompromising tone. But after Cannes, the film simply vanished. Not because of legal issues, not because of financial collapse, but because Hollywood was afraid of it. The story centered on a man who agrees to be tortured and killed on camera to provide for his family was considered far too disturbing for Depp's rising Hollywood image. Executives whispered that releasing the film domestically could damage his career. Distributors feared public backlash. No one wanted to be responsible for bringing such a dark narrative to American audiences.
So, despite being fully finished, The Brave was quietly locked away in the United States.
For years, it existed only in foreign markets or in whispered conversations among cinephiles who traded imported copies. Depp himself rarely discussed it, as if acknowledging the film might reopen wounds Hollywood preferred to keep sealed. To this day, it remains one of the strangest cases in modern cinema, a completed movie effectively banned from its own country because the industry feared what it represented, not about the world, but about the man who made it. Hollywood often celebrates its successes, but the films hidden in vaults and storage rooms reveal a darker truth about the industry. These completed action movies were finished, polished, and ready for audiences, yet buried due to fear, timing, corporate power, or financial uncertainty. They remind us that the stories we never see can be just as fascinating as the blockbusters we do. If you want to continue exploring the hidden corners of Hollywood, the lost films, the buried projects, and the untold secrets behind the scenes, subscribe and turn on notifications. Behind the Velvet Curtain, we'll keep uncovering the stories the studios tried to hide, one forgotten film at a time.